Of all the people to break down why it is Donald Trump won, I'm surprised that Seth Rogen actually has a good point. Seth Rogen explains Trump victory by saying people got sick of effing hippies doing acid in the streets. And it's not absolutely literal, but he's not completely wrong. You see, one of the big issues was that you had far leftists rampaging through the streets, smashing windows. You had these pride events where people were engaged in overt, obscene activities in public. And we even had some of this stuff in West Virginia. So when he's saying he's tired of seeing hippies doing acid in the streets, he also mentioned that they were doing other things in the streets. And that's basically it. He does kind of go back and say sooner or later, people are going to get tired of the cleanup crews coming in and being all stodgy, and they're going to go the other way because it's a pendulum swing. I'm not so convinced in the short term, however. But I don't think he's completely wrong, because I kind of feel that way, right? Let's grab the story. They say Seth Rogen explains Trump victory by saying people got sick of effing hippies doing acid. In a recent profile in Esquire, the Superbad star admitted, wait, what? Superbad star? Come on, the guy's been in a lot of shows and movies. He's in Invincible right now. He is a bit of a woke, I would call him a bad dude, but I digress. He admitted he's not hyperventilating over the second Trump administration, suggesting that the 2024 election results represent the natural ebb and flow of American politics. People get sick of seeing effing hippies doing acid and effing on their lawns, and they're like, let's effing clean this street up a little bit. And then people get sick of seeing effing dorks cleaning up the streets, and they go back the other way. Kind of, but not really. Rogen added he tries to keep a cool head amidst all the talk about the country's stark political divide, saying, I personally try not to go too dark on all of it and think like, oh, we're on the precipice of global societal collapse. Since the end of the Civil War, America's remained a very divided country in a lot of ways. I just want to point out, a bit optimistic from the guy, but this dude was overly anti-Trump, very woke for a long time. And I think what we're seeing now with the likes of Seth Rogen and many other progressives is that they're trying to walk things back because they know the majority of the country, hey, the market share is not on your side. For these people, they're trying to sell movie tickets, TV show tickets, whatever you want to call it. And guess what? Get woke, go broke. Today, the previews for the new Captain America film are releasing. So basically the movie's out today. And I bet it's going to bomb miserably. I mean, it'll probably make some money. I plan on going to see it because I like to be apprised to the movies that are coming out. But Joe, I look at stuff like this and I'm like, guys, I think society is breaking down. I think he's wrong when he says this. He's trying desperately to maintain some kind of cohesion. But I am glad to see that a lot of the overtly woke stuff is like not as prominent anymore. He says, that's not to say it doesn't have very real and troubling ramifications on many people's lives, but I try to maintain hope that the ball will roll onwards, even though it might be wobbling back and forth. Rogen's unruffled perspective on Trump is a departure from his earlier statements about the president and the Republican Party at large. During an appearance on The Late Show with Colbert in 2021, the comedic actor called Ted Cruz a fascist for supporting Trump and questioning the 2020 election. Quote, Ted Cruz is a fascist. He denies the reality of the election. His words cause people to die, and I'm making jokes about it. This guy, you see what he's doing? Rogen justified anti-Trump resistance in an interview with the Daily Beast in 2017, saying, I don't want to look back in 10 years and think, I just didn't say anything during that time, because it seems like a time when it's very important to normalize dissent. However, he did note at the time, I've been very conscious not to insult people who voted for Donald Trump. I can respect that, but the dude, I got to tell you, Seth Rogen and many of these people, they bet on the wrong horse. Taylor Swift got booed, and here we are. I do think it's interesting that we're seeing a lot of these movies try to abandon these woke tropes, but companies like Disney, when they say they're getting rid of DEI, they're actually not. They're saying they're getting rid of it, and then they're still keeping this stuff in place, but with different names. What they're trying to do is go underground. Largely, that's what Seth Rogen is doing. But you know what? I got to tell you, 13 years ago, about 13 years ago, I was at an event. Was it 13? I don't know. 10 years ago. It's been a long time. I was at an event in the Netherlands, and it was a broadcasters conference. And I was talking with a bunch of producers, and I told them fame was over. And they were like, you're nuts. And I said, fame's over, man. The way we know it and see it today, where you have a spattering of celebrities with a Q rating and then everybody else, that's done. It's going to flatten out. It's going to be more like a very flat hill instead of a tower. What I mean is, back in the day, I mean, even 20 years ago, Fame was very much of all of the people, and then in this very, very narrow tower, there's fame. And you are either famous or you weren't. Today, it's not really how it works. Today, you can be someone like me. You know, I've got millions of followers. It's a big show. It wields a decent amount of influence, but, you know, like, I'm not as famous as Seth Rogen. If you walk down the street and say, have you heard of Seth Rogen? They're going to be like, oh, yeah, that actor. And if you say, you've heard of Tim Pool? They'll be like, no. A lot of people do recognize me and do know me, but this is my point. It's breaking down. In the past several years, it's actually been breaking down a bit more than that. If you watch, the trend for online media is actually towards diminishing. There's only so many channels that can exist, only so many podcasts, so many choices to make. And you take a look at the average viewership. There is people who grow and new channels emerge. That's true. But they're smaller than the giants before them. With all due respect to Joe Rogan, you take a look at his viewership on YouTube, and maybe it's because it's divided up on Spotify or otherwise, but it's not the same as it used to be. Joe Rogan was the king of the podcasting world, first in, best dressed, biggest audience. But as podcasting has expanded and more money's moved into the space, and with ease of access, it's starting to flatten out dramatically. While he certainly still is the biggest podcast in the world, it's not the same as it used to be. And I'm not saying that to drag the guy or anything like that. I consider him a friend. He's a good dude. He's actually one of the better dudes that I know. I'm just saying that over a long enough period of time, you've got 5,000 choices in a morning show. Who are you going to watch? Thus, quantity ends up becoming the strategic play for most people. That's why I think social culture is breaking down. Part of why I want to do the deal with Rumble, because we need to create spheres of influence. And fame will exist to a certain degree, but it's going to be a lot harder to be the most famous guy in the world. Trump certainly is. That's different. You're the president, very consequential. But now as it pertains to media and music, you know, the music I listen to, it's pretty wild. I'll put it this way. First, I want to say, so you can understand what I'm getting to. Seth Rogen is saying this stuff because the market share is diminishing for everybody. No longer are the days where you can star in a movie that makes $1 billion and make $100 million for yourself. Kind of, but not really. It's going away. Now, a lot of these celebrities, people like Seth Rogen, are doing Netflix films for much smaller budgets and they're making much less money because there's too many choices. That's where we're currently at. For a show like this, you know, we might, there was a period where I was getting like 300 to 500,000 views per video, but content strategy for most people has been massive expansion, quantity over quality, because you're trying to flood the zone. And that's where we're going. So the reason I bring this up is I think that's where we're going to be moving forward. And what that means is maybe the ebb and flow is actually a decentralization of media, but eventually everyone's on an even playing field. Sooner or later, someone will become substantially better than other people, but I don't know for sure. I'll tell you what I find really interesting is that there are some people who get their news from a podcast with 10,000 subscribers. Now, obviously, with 10,000 subscribers, it's going to be around 10,000 people, right, who are watching that show. But you might go to someone and they'll be like, oh, dude, yeah, like I get my news from Dr. Guitar Breaker, you know, and the pumpkin growers. And you're like, what? Yeah, it's a podcast. It's really great. You should check it out. You're like, I've never heard of that. And you watch, and it's lower quality, but they get their information from that. That didn't used to be the case. Actually, let me put it like this. Some of my favorite bands, I was actually surprised to find, Metric, for instance, probably my favorite band. Some of they put out a song, like their latest single, and it's one of their biggest, and it's got like 500,000 views after 2 years. And I'm not trying to be a dick, because I love the band. They're fantastic. The Metric is the greatest band of all time, and anybody who disagrees is wrong. But anyway, as I was saying, so we put out some songs, and I don't consider them to be particularly culturally relevant, to be honest, but they have millions of views. So, for instance, our biggest release ever that sold the most was Together Again, which was a parody of the Daily Wire's Smokey Mike and the God King song Together Again, which was a parody of Happy Together. And that's why we kind of did it as a double-layered joke. The song, I think, ultimately has around 10 million total streams and views between the video and the audio side. And there's like a lyric video, which has millions. And it's kind of crazy to think that people played it millions of times. And it's nuts. But we never won any awards. We were never featured anywhere. Magazines never wrote about us. Isn't that kind of crazy? So my point ultimately is, The bands that I listen to, they're famous. They have awards and accolades, but they don't get that much traffic. Influence is changing, and it's going to be very difficult for a narrative machine to exist that counters Trump or opposes one idea or the other. It's going to be very difficult to create mass media manipulation campaigns, basically what I'm saying. Seth Rogen's going to come out. Other celebrities will come out because they know there is a shrinking market share for what they have to offer. And if they want to make money, they've got to maximize, get as many people as possible to watch or listen. Everybody knows it's always been the case. Only this time, you are fighting that fight yourself. I'll put it this way. I was watching, there's this movie called The Nines with Ryan Reynolds and Melissa McCarthy and a handful of other actors. Kind of surprising how many people are in it. And it's like a 3-part series about 3 different characters. One of the characters is trying to get a TV show picked up. And it's crazy how it works in that field. When television was the dominant media platform, there's no internet, and 20 million people could watch your show, you were just basically saying, let's make a pilot and see how it does. And they'd put it on TV, and millions of people would see it. People would know who you are. Something interesting happens, though. You had a contract with the talent agency or with the network, and if you screwed them over, they'd say you'll never work in this town again. And it's because if there are 3 networks and you screw over one, the other 2 are going to be like, we're not going to go to war with the other network. We don't want to. We're competing. Sorry, you can't work for us. Now, you can get fired from your job and start a YouTube channel, and you can maintain that influence. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's going to be very difficult for these celebrities to maintain market share. So one of 2 things is going to happen. They're going to create niche mission-driven markets where you'll get many celebrities in the trans community, which it's what's happening. And then advertisers are going to decentralize to agencies to try and buy ad space because you can't buy from one channel anymore. Fame is going to be extremely isolated, and very few people will be truly famous. Kendrick Lamar, take a look at the halftime show at the Super Bowl. The point Milo made, which was interesting, is that nobody knows who he is. And he's not right, he's not wrong. Kendrick Lamar is very famous with big hits, but I got to be honest, I have no idea about any of his songs. So when he starts rapping, I was deeply impressed by his technical ability, but I had no idea any of these songs, so I'm not into it. And the point he made was, when you're doing a halftime show, you want to bring out a celebrity who's going to play a song that everyone can sing to. That doesn't really exist anymore, does it? Case in point, that's why I brought up the music we released. So we've put out 8 songs so far. All of them, no, not all of them, 6 of them have millions of views. It's kind of wild. The Will of the People, the first song we put out, 3 million, maybe like 4 or 5 million. And it's interesting because views don't actually equal engagement. We put out one of our first official releases. It was Only Ever Wanted. And I don't even know how you describe the song. It's like very soft vocals and like ambient sounds. And it got massive play and it was a Billboard hit. But it got played because of cultural interest, not because the song was necessarily good. So a handful of people liked it. A lot of people hated it and they listened to it anyway. Then we put out a song called Genocide. I think it's got like 2 million views. The thing I'm pointing out is these songs were bigger than a lot of the music that's played on the radio. When I go to the casinos or the malls, I'm like, that song they're playing right now has 500,000 YouTube views and the song we put out has 10 million. So what does that really mean? My point is we may have influence with you. That's my point. I put out a song, gets a ton of play. You guys listen to it, but it's not in the mainstream. It's not in the TV shows. And so the question is, there's 2 different realities that are existing. The people who watch Jimmy Kimmel and listen to the radio and Pandora and Spotify who know who Kendrick Lamar is, and the growing podcast independent space where influence is flat. So if you went back, like I would put it this way. When I say that this band has got 500,000 views on their song they put out, yeah, but they probably have 30 million different people have heard the song because it's been on the radio. Maybe they can't identify the band or whatever. And then for the songs we put out, people actually know who I am and listen to it. And it's not really in their playlists or whatever. It's cultural interest and it's fleeting. My point ultimately is that things are changing. And with this decentralization and influence, it's going to make things very, very interesting. I don't know how we will maintain cultural coherence as this continues. But I guess what I'll say is it's why we wanted to do the Rumble deal. I know that the Timcast island of influence is limited. We want to team up with others so that these islands effectively have bridges to each different one. And thus, when we do the uncensored call-in show on Rumble Premium, go to timcastpremium.com, sign up to Rumble Premium. We have people who are like, hey, I'm not a Timcast subscriber. I'm a Mug Club, Steven Crowder subscriber, but now I'm going to watch your show. That network effect will create spheres of influence. So basically what I'm saying is we need to actually team up, build these networks to maintain a coherent cultural identity. Otherwise, it all falls apart. Nobody knows what to believe or who's right, or how do you try to find success if everybody just despises each other and it's all tribalism? We'll see. Anyway, man, whatever. These people are going to come out, and with the popular vote showing Trump won, you're going to see a lot more of this. I'll wrap it up there. Smash that like button, share the show with everyone. You know, we got more segments, and we'll see you all then.